It's the black guy in the corner, but they'd rather see a on the corner. They say I'm stealing Nick's clips like I'm stealing Nick's chick, not knowing that I hit him first week for the lick. I said, Nick, I could post here while you post there. Let's run the ads up, then let's meet up over there.
Good evening, everybody. You're watching America First. My name is Nicholas J. Fuentes. We have a great show for you tonight. Very excited to be back here with you tonight on Wednesday. We have a lot to talk about tonight, lots to get into. Big show. Our featured story, we're finally going to talk about everything that's been happening over the past week with regard to the right-wing retaliation against the left. And I will say at the outset, I fully support it. I fully support it. Go all the way. And by all the way, I don't mean like kill people or anything or violence, but this is refreshing to see. The right wing is in power. The right wing has been in power, but the right wing never uses power. We are always chasing, trying to win elections, trying to define the culture. And whenever we get an opportunity to do that, we never use it to our advantage. We never exploit it. And now we finally are. And so tonight we'll be talking about three specific things. We'll talk about this database of over 80,000 names, this Charlie Kirk data foundation. 80,000 names of liberals or radical left-wingers or who even knows their politics, but 80,000 names of people who have been publicly celebrating the murder of Charlie Kirk. And presumably this database will be used to prevent those people from being employed or from being enrolled in colleges. It will be used to ostracize those people, and that is a good thing. 100%. We'll talk about the firing of Jimmy Kimmel, but not so fast. He's not really being fired. If you read the fine print, they're going to have a talk with him, and I suppose he's going to have to put out some kind of statement. Whatever, it's fine. But he's being penalized. And lastly, what is the last story? We'll talk about Trump's, and we'll see if it even happens, but Trump posted on Truth Social this evening that he is going to designate Antifa as a terrorist organization. Once again, not so fast. He said he would do that 10 years ago, and it never happened. So I'm not going to hold my breath. But if he follows through, that would be huge. So we'll talk about that series of developments. There's been a lot of pushback. Not a ton, but there's been some significant pushback on the right. People are saying that this is right-wing cancel culture. They're saying, how are we any better than the left? They're saying, isn't that hypocritical? I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it. And I don't even think we need to argue about it at all, actually. The time for arguments is over. It's been over. You want to see the last guy that was arguing with the left? Well, you can attend his funeral on Sunday. He got shot for arguing, so I'm good. We tried debating. We tried arguing. We tried running for office. We tried governing, and what happened? Well, let's see. Trump got shot in the head, and then Charlie Kirk got shot in the neck and died. And now our own side wants to argue about the principle of the matter. They want to argue about consistency, hypocrisy. We are in a war. This is a war. This is a fight. All this talk about fairness, principles, objectivity, does not apply here. It does not apply because we are fighting against an enemy that wants us dead, that wants us bankrupted, ostracized. Look at what they have done to everybody that opposes the system. Lawfare, persecution, death threats, murder. murder attempts. This is what they do. What did they do to the president, to Charlie Kirk, to me? I have people texting me, you shouldn't support censorship. Then they'll take away our rights. My rights already got taken away. I can't process credit cards. I can't have a bank account. I was put on a federal no-fly list for a year. I'm still banned on Instagram and Facebook, and I never shot anybody, and I never celebrated shooting anybody. Now you want to talk about our rights? It's a little late. So we'll talk all about that. That'll be our main story. We'll get into all those different developments. Before we get into it, though, I want to remind you to smash the follow button here on Rumble. Smash the like button, leave a comment. Let me know what you think about the show. One other thing before we get into it, and obviously I feel very strongly about that. One other thing before we dive into the show and the latest on the Charlie Kirk assassination tonight. Did you see this? So as you know, for the past week, there has been a vigorous debate about who killed Charlie Kirk. Now, the FBI has a suspect in custody. They've charged him. His name is Tyler Robinson? Tyler Robinson. A Groyper. We have reason to believe, based on what has been custody, the path to all those different developments. Before we get into it, though, I want to remind you to smash the follow button here on Rumble. Smash the like button, leave a comment. Let me know what you think about the show. One other thing before we get into it, and obviously I feel very strongly about that. One other thing before we dive into the show and the latest on the Charlie Kirk assassination tonight. Did you see this? So as you know, for the past week, there has been a vigorous debate about who killed Charlie Kirk. Now, the FBI has a suspect in custody. They've charged him. His name is Tyler Robinson? Tyler Robinson is in custody, but there are conspiracy theorists on the left who say that he's a Groyper. We have reason to believe, based on what has been reported to us by the governor of Utah and law enforcement, that Robinson was of the left. But there's a contingent on the internet which insists that it was not Tyler Robinson at all. It wasn't the radical right or the radical left, but it was Israel, that Israel struck down Charlie Kirk. Ordinarily, that would be a completely ridiculous thing to say. Completely, utterly ridiculous. You would be laughed out of any room for suggesting that. Why? Because Charlie Kirk was pro-Israel his entire life. Pro-Israel to the hilt. And as far as I'm aware, that never changed. But there is a conspiracy theory that has been promulgated, notably by Max Blumenthal, a Russian shill and a far-left Jew. Candace Owens, another Russia shill and a complete grifter, among others. Jackson Hinkle, another Russian shill, far-left communist. These three have been promulgating the theory that Charlie Kirk was killed by Israel, and they say that is because Charlie Kirk was on the verge of an utter transformation. He was going to start criticizing Israel apparently any day. That he had a significant falling out with his Jewish donors, that they were blackmailing him, interrogating him, intervening, berating him, attempting to bribe him. And since his death, we were told that they were lying about him. But it's been a full week. I was very skeptical of the theory, and the reason being because although I didn't know Charlie Kirk personally, I fought Charlie Kirk for 6 years. And the primary reason that I fought Charlie Kirk was his support for Israel. And that never changed. I had been banned from all of his events for that reason, ostracized by his movement until the day that he died. He refused to debate me because of that issue. People would call into his show and either supporting or opposing me, ask about me and my following, and he insisted that I was an anti-Semitic troll. At one point, he even said there was some concerned caller asked about her young children. She said, my high school age children are Nick Fuentes supporters. What do I tell them? You know what his response was? He said, Jew hatred, blaming the Jews for everything is a mental illness. He said, you know what would be more productive? Tell them to observe the Shabbat on Saturday. I'm not making this up. He said, tell them to take a Hillsdale course. Tell them to observe the Shabbat. That's who we're dealing with here. And I only say that for the sake of this argument. I don't say that to be disrespectful. Those are the facts. That's what he said. That's what happened. But there has been this insistence over the past week that, no, you don't understand. He was on the verge of turning it all around, and they had to take him out. Now, I asked the obvious question, which is, well, really? Why would they take him out if he was their biggest fan? They say, well, he wasn't. I said, well, why wouldn't they take out somebody that was explicitly criticizing Israel, like Tucker Carlson or Candace Owens or me or anybody who has been explicitly criticizing Israel over the past year? They say, well, he was unique because he was so powerful with the youth. Okay. So I ask a very simple question. I say, well, where's the evidence? Where's the connection? For this, people are calling me a shill for Israel. Really? I asked for the evidence. You know what I saw all over Twitter this week? The clip went up last night during my show where I said there's no evidence, there's no connection. And I'm not making this up. I saw people say, we don't need evidence. I saw somebody else say the precedent is the evidence. In other words, Israel kills people all the time, so that's evidence that they killed Charlie, because they kill a lot of people. Somebody else said, well, we'll never get evidence because that's how good Israel really is. There's no connection, there's no evidence, there'll never be evidence. People said, what do you expect? They're going to come out and admit it? Well, I think there's some room between zero evidence and an admission by the Israeli state. You know, maybe there's some connection, some, something. And then, this was the best part. Get a load of this. Candace Owens, who has been promulgating this theory for the past week, she's been getting unbelievable viewership. And you know what? Congratulations, you did it again. She's got unbelievable viewership. Isn't that what it's ultimately about? Candace Owens finally admitted tonight that Israel wasn't behind it at all, and she never said they were. Actually, she never claimed that. Never said that. She said Israel had nothing to do with it. I never claimed that they did. Really? This is the tweet. This is from her Twitter earlier today. She writes, it's crazy how I never once said that Israel murdered Charlie Kirk, but the Zionists are repeating that without a shred of evidence. Remember, if they aren't lying, they aren't breathing. Okay, really now? Seriously? So get a load of this. For the past week, she has been insisting to millions and millions of people on Twitter, on YouTube, that she is an investigator, a reporter. She's got the receipts. She's got the evidence. And look at the way that she puffs herself up. Don't lie to me. You can't lie to me. He was my friend. I'm going to bring all the receipts. Unacceptable. And for literally the past week, uninterrupted, nonstop, she has been pushing this narrative on her show that Israel killed Charlie Kirk. That Netanyahu killed Charlie Kirk because he refused to bribe and was turning against them, and the donors tried to intervene, and he wouldn't listen. He was going to take the youth with him, so they shot him in the throat symbolically to show they were silencing his voice. That's from her show. And lo and behold, now she says, oh, I never claimed that at all. There's no evidence I ever said that. Really? If anybody takes this person seriously after this, you are a sucker. This person should have zero credibility going forward. I told you, there is no evidence for this theory. As much as, and believe me, we talk about Israel a lot on the show, and Israel is behind a lot of things. I've talked about that all year. Israel, in my opinion, has basically taken over the Trump administration. That is why we are bombing Iran. That is why we have given them $12 billion so far this year. That is why there is a war against Harvard. That is why FEMA was holding search and rescue funds hostage against municipalities and cities and towns that were boycotting Israel. We can blame them for a lot, and they're behind a lot. But they're so obviously not behind this. And because I didn't rush to judgment, I was called the shill. Now, the primary driver of this theory, the primary proponent, is now admitting that she was effectively grifting off of this lie. There was this calculated effort to, by insinuation, imply that Israel was behind it, almost in a legalistic way, almost in like a lawyerly way. I never said they were behind it. I just, implied it day after day after day. I pretended like I had evidence, never presented it. Maybe that's going behind the paywall too, like my interview with her. What a joke. Talk about discrediting yourself. Talk about discrediting the Israel critical right wing. And honestly, that is maybe the biggest damage that is being done. Because that's what everybody recognizes her as, is the face or one of the faces of the Israel critical right wing. And you know what? If you're like the boy who cried wolf and you blame them for everything and literally everything is just Jew, Israel, it does make us look like idiots. It does make us look unserious. It does make it look like we actually don't have arguments, because Israel is behind a lot of things. They're not behind literally everything that happens. You can blame them for a lot. You can't blame them for literally everything that takes place on earth. And if you do, with no evidence, and then you backpedal, then you just look like an idiot. And then you just look like a crank and a kook. And how can anybody take us seriously when Israel is behind something? And here's the damage that's being done. I'm going to be very specific about this. This is not me expressing my personal problems with Candace Owens, although it may come across that way. Let me be very specific. In the background of everything that is happening right now with Charlie Kirk, Israel is rolling tanks through Gaza City. Everybody took their eye off the ball, and while we're talking about Charlie Kirk, and rightfully so, but while we are distracted, Israel is rolling tanks through Gaza City, destroying all their remaining buildings. And their next move, after they do this, is they're getting ready for regime change in Iran. Mark my words, take it to the bank. They have been talking about it openly. Marco Rubio was there a few days ago, and that is what the Israelis told the American delegation. We want regime change in Iran. And it's been said often, how will they get the American public behind a war in Iran? It's not a difficult question. It's an obvious question. It's pretty clear that they may use a false flag attack. Quite obviously. They benefited from the war in Iraq. That's why we ask questions about 9/11. If we're going to war in Iran, will there be an analog to that? Will there be an analogous false flag attack? Now, what happens if every time something happens, Dummy over there, dummy Candace Owens says, Israel, Israel, Israel. Oh, no, I have no evidence. Oh, I never said they did it. Then when Israel actually does do a false flag, we look like the boy that cried wolf. That's when credibility. No. Now, what happens if every time something happens, dummy over there, dummy Candace Owens says, Israel, Israel, Israel. Oh, no, I have no evidence. Oh, I never said they did it. Then when Israel actually does do a false flag, we look like the boy that cried wolf. People are going to say, remember the last time you blamed them with no evidence? Remember the last time? And you said, we don't need evidence. They're just responsible for everything. That's when credibility is going to be really important. It might be of world historical importance, actually, to have credibility in a moment like that. That's why it's important not to take the bait and say that they're behind everything from Cracker Barrel changing their logo to Charlie Kirk being shot to who knows what else. So, talk about a lack of integrity. All she did for the past week was gaslight the public, and by definition, that's what it is. Gaslight her audience, gaslight the public. Netanyahu lied. They shot him in the throat because they're taking his voice. I have all these receipts, but I'm not going to publish them. And then literally a week later, she's going to put on Twitter, oh, I never said they were behind it. I never said that at all. I just strongly implied it. We all know what you said. We all know what you meant. You dummy, you irresponsible, grifting dummy. I've so had it with that. And at the end of the day, she's just stupid and defines low IQ anti-Semitism. I used to think it didn't exist. I used to think that low IQ anti-Semitism is just something that Jewish people would say to counter the rising tide of people acknowledging Jewish power. Now I'm convinced it's real. And it has a name. That name is Candace Owens Farmer. Low IQ anti-Semitism. The idea that Charlie Kirk was silenced for being about to go against Israel, it's just, on its face, absurd and ridiculous. And so anyway, all those people that said, oh, Nick got the call, Nick's really afraid right now. Believe you me, when we get back to our regularly scheduled programming next week, when we have processed everything having to do with this horrific assassination, rest assured we will be talking about the Middle East conflict. I have not changed my views even slightly, not even in a minute way, not at all. The idea that Israel's number one cheerleader on the right wing was somehow killed by Israel, sorry, not buying it. And the people promulgating that idea, they're not even saying that. Tucker's not saying that. Candace isn't saying that. They're just weirdly implying it. And I wonder why that is. Releasing no evidence. And I would reiterate, this is the last thing I'll say before we move on. Candace Owens made a very specific claim. She said that Charlie Kirk sent a letter to Netanyahu, and she said that Netanyahu held up that letter when he eulogized Charlie Kirk in the news the day of. She said, and he mischaracterized the contents of the letter. She said, and if he keeps doing that, I'll reveal the letter. You need to reveal the letter. Show us what you have. Once again, if you have any integrity at all, or if you care at all about your journalistic credibility, you have to release the information. Do not hide. Do not backpedal. Do not gaslight now that you got called on your bullshit, dummy. Now that you got called on your nonsense, show us what you have. Not behind a paywall, not next week on Becoming Brigitte, not next on our next season. No cliffhangers, please. No grifting. Well, subscribe and then you gain it. No. You need to put out the letter. Where is the letter? Where is the letter that Charlie Kirk sent to Netanyahu that you say Netanyahu mischaracterized? Show us the letter. Scan it, put it on Twitter immediately. Otherwise, you're a joke. Otherwise, you are just as bad as the lying Jewish media, because that's the kind of shit that the Jewish media pulls. It's no different. And here's the thing. We, on this dissident side, we have many disadvantages. We are censored. We are slandered. We are boxed out of institutional circles. The one superpower that we have is the truth. We have the truth on our side. We have credibility. And the reason that so many people are looking to people like me, or even Candace or Tucker, is because to the extent that we're talking about what Israel is doing, we're telling the truth that the media is not. And that is why we are some of the most popular figures on the right wing today. That's why we are surging inexplicably, in spite of all of those disadvantages. Tucker getting canned at Fox, Candace getting canned at Daily Wire, me being banned from everything, never having been paid by Rupert Murdoch or Ben Shapiro. And if you start to lie, if you start to finesse or manipulate the truth and you lose your credibility, then you have no advantage there. And people are and that's actually a serious problem. Because I'll tell you what, when people look at these conspiratards and Red Lobster's a conspiracy, Cracker Barrel's a conspiracy, sooner or later, very intelligent people, they're gonna tune out. My right hand to God, I have seen it happen. My right hand to God, I have seen very brilliant, very intelligent young men from Ivy League schools working in the Trump administration. They have literally been pushed back into mainstream politics because they were repelled by the kind of grifting and dishonesty that they see from some of these characters. Because there's just not intellectual rigor. There's not seriousness. It actually does have severe negative effects. That's why people like Richard Hanania are being taken more seriously. Because people say, you know what? I'm a super intelligent young man. I'm not buying a lot of this crazy kookery kind of stuff. I'm not buying this. When people start to say, we don't need evidence, fucking Jews did it. Like, a lot of people start to say, you know what? I'm tuning out now. Maybe I'm going to look at the mainstream and these other guys because they both seem to be dishonest in their own way. That's very problematic. So I know Keith Woods has recognized this. He's been outspoken about it. We have to bring to the best of our ability intellectual rigor. And that doesn't mean excusing what the Jews or Israel does. On the contrary, but it means we must be rigorous in our argumentation, in our evidence. We have to be rational. We have to be fact-based. We have to look for evidence. If there's evidence, I will look at it. I'm a very open-minded person. But the day that we start to make assumptions, the day that we start to say, all right, who cares about the evidence? That's when you really start to lose people. So anyway, it's a profound disservice. And it's been like that all year with her. The Frankist thing, Emmanuel Macron is married to his transgender dad. It's just creating something that is very much like the old Republican Party, which is like a kind of low-class group of cranks, a kind of low-class, dishonest, superstitious group of cranks. It gives me the same vibes of the old GOP, which is kind of like a freak show. People speaking in tongues, the charismatic type stuff. And it's like, yeah, we actually want elite human capital. We actually want brilliant people that are not, subscribing to a lot of that sort of nonsense. When you start to say it's a satanic Frankist conspiracy, they're not Jews, they're Frankists, and everyone's secretly transgender, and Charlie Kirk was shot in the neck inside of a menorah by the Masons to shut him up. It's like, okay. So anyway, the backpedal is mythical, and she has to be held accountable for that. And by that, I know this is a tense moment. I mean, people need to tell her, put up or shut up. Give us the receipts. Be honest. Don't now backpedal and back down from what you said, little girl. Hey, little girl, you put that out for a week. Israel did it. Netanyahu did it. She's making these negress faces. She's making this Negro Karen faces. I tell you what, Netanyahu. So fucking cocky. And now, today, not so cocky. Now, today, she's on Twitter. Oh, I never said Israel did it. Oh, Bafangul, come on now. Really? I don't think so, little girl. I don't think so. This is politics. So anyway, I saw that. I lost my mind. Really? The shamelessness. Her and Max Blumenthal, too. And Max Blumenthal, look at that guy's face and tell me that's an honest broker. Max Blumenthal is a left-wing Jew, and he is like this with Russia. Look at that guy's ghoulish, pale face, this nebbish, and tell me that's an honest broker. These two, you can keep them. Jackson Hinkle, he can't even tell you what communism is. He's this big. Max Blumenthal's a left-wing Jew Russia shill, and Candace Owens is as dumb as they come. Trust me, she makes the stereotype seem true. If Ben Shapiro didn't scoop her up, you'd see her arguing with the register at Kmart. You'd see her fighting over the receipt at Kmart. She'd have a purse full of frozen steaks, shoplifting. You can keep them. You can keep all three of them. You can keep all three of them. All these Russia shills, left-wing Jew Blumenthal, left-wing midget Jackson Hinkle, who's dumb as a fucking rock, and Candace Owens, the living, walking stereotype. Look at how she talked 10, 15 years ago. She was suing people for racism. If the Jews, and it's funny about her, the Jews wrote the script for her and they made her a star. Now that she don't have the Jews writing the script for her, now she sounds exactly like her sisters. Now she sounds like a regular sister fighting with the TSA. You can keep them. We're good. The high IQ anti-Semites are seceding from the Russia shills, the low IQ anti-Semites, the dummies, the people that say it's not the Jews, it's Israel, it's not Israel, it's Netanyahu. You can keep them. We're good. Anyway, that's that. But I do want to move on, and I want to talk all about the right-wing reprisal against the left, finally, for some good news. And I have to say, you know what? Trump has come in clutch.
All right, so let's talk about it. As I'm listening to this episode, I feel as if Nick is definitely frustrated. And I can understand. I can understand that frustration is what a lot of people are feeling throughout the country. This frustration is the same thing that fuels both parties. The frustration is the same thing that fuels both parties and that allows these powers that be to divide and conquer us, to manipulate us in a bunch of different ways that are beneficial for them, but detrimental to us. I realize that a lot of times we focus on right and wrong, what's justified when we're talking about vengeance or when we're talking about being at war, as Nick is discussing. And when we're having the conversation about being at war, it's first off, who's the enemy? If we're on the left, is the right the enemy? If we're on the right, is the left the enemy? Or is it the people that keep pinning us together or putting us against each other to where we're seeing each other as the enemy and not even recognizing like, yo, there's a bigger play here. There's a bigger play. This is how it's supposed to be designed. This is how they can radicalize us one way or another, keep us fighting and engaged with each other to the point where we're not seeing the big picture and focusing on what the overall goal perhaps should be. Now, Nick, and I've watched the entire clip, so I don't want to go a little bit too far ahead in what I'm reacting to, but I believe that Nick has demonstrated to us that he wants a society where everybody's living in harmony and that's good for everybody. I believe he said that over and over and over. Now, when I hear him respond to a lot of these different things, it may not come across that way. And I think what becomes potentially dangerous, the same way it's dangerous on the other side, whatever that means, is when you become frustrated and emotional, and perhaps the rhetoric that you're using is not going to be received based on the intent that you're having for voicing it. You may be mature enough to voice your frustrations and to hear these frustrations and not want to crash out, not want to take up arms, not want to make people feel, let's say, how a Matt Walsh video may make people feel. Angry, upset, we got to fix this on ourselves, we got to take up arms. He may not be intending that. And over throughout this episode, Nick talks about, and I'm not bringing up violence. I'm not talking about violence. The fact that you have to say that you're not talking about violence, to me, that tells me that you want to make it very clear to the people that you're speaking to that you may be speaking in a way that may make them want to go and do some violence, or that is a hesitation on your part, or a concern, I should say, where you know the things that you're voicing and how you're voicing them, how they may come across to certain people that, let's say, if they're more frustrated than you. Let's say if somebody's listening to you and they're more pissed off, they don't have the emotional intelligence or discipline and maturity that you may have, and they may just be willing to just go out here and just feed whatever frustrations they have and crash out. These are the things that I have to think about when I'm listening to Nick speak. And I think Nick would want us to think about these things. And I think we have to hold him to that standard of thinking about it himself. Even when it comes to the Candace Owens situation, this petty thing between Nick and Candace, to me, it doesn't serve anybody. It doesn't serve anybody. And Nick's critiques, I'm not saying that they're not fair. I've said some of these same things about Candace. And it's almost as if the things that make her a great journalist sometimes may make her lose sight of the main goal, or in different scenarios. I'm trying to think if I can think of a specific example, but even with her being so obsessive with the Brigitte, cool. You know, a lot of the things that she puts out, whether it's the George Floyd documentary, whether it's the Black Lives Matter documentary, those were based on her obsessing on one particular group. And perhaps maybe she's obsessing on the Israel standpoint. Nick does a good job. Well, I'll let everybody else decide whether it's a good job or not. But Nick is clear on calling out Candace, how she may do the same thing that I'm criticizing Nick for, just bringing some light when it comes to Nick as far as to her audience. She may be putting out certain information with a certain intent, but her audience is going to receive it in a way where it's like, oh, Israel did this. She may be implying all these different things based on her hatred for Israel, her hatred for Bibi Netanyahu, her hatred for people that put her in the situation that they did when she was fired, all these different things. She clearly has a certain level of hatred and disdain for a certain group of people. Not to say that it's the entire group of Israel, not to say that it's every Jewish person, not saying that at all, but for a particular group of people that fall into a certain category. So it makes the things that she says now come across in a way where her audience may receive it as if, oh no, she's putting all the blame on Israel. So this is the same thing that I'm saying with Nick. Nick and Candace, in my opinion, just my opinion, have to be responsible and take accountability in not only the message that they're giving, but how their message is going to be received. I'm not sure that they're receiving that information in a way that Nick wants them to receive it. I'm not sure. And the reason why I say the way Nick wants them to receive it is based on what Nick is saying. I'm not inciting violence. I'm not talking about, the regular Black people. I'm talking about a specific group. I don't think that your audience and your most passionate supporters are mature enough necessarily to separate the two. I know how I've responded to certain situations. I know how I may hear Nick say certain things, and even though I may agree with it, it still gets you a little tight. Like, you still feel something, and it's because we all have emotions. So therefore, when Nick is expressing these things based on his frustrations and he's being emotional expressing these things, he may be talking about Candace. He may be talking about a particular small group of people that are a part of a larger group, but how it comes across to the people that also are frustrated and maybe more frustrated than him, maybe more frustrated with life, where they're looking for somebody to blame. They may have a certain level of victimhood that Nick may not be taking into account. They're looking to place blame, perhaps. What did we say on the last show? That this is a time in America where it seems like every group is embracing victimhood. Every group has like a rightful claim to be victims, it seems like. Where if they made a case why the country is oppressing them, why America is not working in their favor, in their best interest, it would probably come across as like, yeah, you got a point. But what's the overall goal? I think that's the theme for me. Whenever I'm hearing people express their frustrations, to me, it always comes back to what is the overall goal? Forget what's right and wrong. Because most of the time when it comes to right and wrong, we determine that based on our emotions, how we're feeling, how something made us feel, how this situation made us feel. Nick's talking about a lot of the people that are responding to Charlie Kirk's death. I can understand how people would be emotionally furious when it comes to people laughing, mocking his death. I understand that. I totally understand that. But what is the response that you're giving, and how is that response going to make somebody that may be even more pissed off than you about that situation that you're talking about? So I just understand it. It's not, to me, it's not about right and wrong. It's about, first and foremost, what is the goal? Do we have a common goal? Okay, if that's the goal, then what's the best way to respond to this? Not for me to get off what I just feel, but for me to lead this group of people that are passionately following me and make sure that they're on the same page, not willing to crash out and do the very same things that I criticize other people for doing. That's my takeaway when I hear all this stuff. So Nick did point out, and I'm trying to make sure that I don't go too far ahead, but Nick pointed out in regards to Israel that it's clear that Israel has taken over the Trump administration, which is interesting because I believe in the beginning he was saying how he's trying to give Trump some credit, and I think it finished off with, or it's getting ready to go into Nick discussing how clutch Trump is. But aside from that, so Nick said that Israel has taken over the Trump administration. I think a lot of people believe that. I think Candace Owens believes that. And I think that's a part of Candace, as far as what Nick is criticizing, blaming Israel for everything. I think that's a part of it. When Nick can acknowledge that the Trump administration has been taken over by Israel, imagine how strong and powerful and how much leverage you have to control Donald Trump and his administration. Think about that. Imagine how much power and leverage, and when I say leverage, what you have to have against him, or what you have when it comes to negotiating, like, hey, Trump, you're going to do these things. Trump doesn't seem like the type that you're just going to bully, and especially when it comes to going against his base, going against his supporters, going against his Make America Great Again and America First principles. Based on his base, the actual people that follow it, based on him and how he defined it initially. Trump has lashed out and said, well, they can't define, I am MAGA. So all I hear is you being frustrated because you're calling out for not living to the standards that you've set for MAGA, that you've set for America First, that you campaigned on. So when it comes to Candace and her expressing her frustrations, perhaps this is why she's blaming Israel for everything. Not to say that it's right. And Nick brought up a valid point. Will this be a boy cried wolf situation where, because you blame Israel for everything that comes up, and you're not giving any evidence, you're not putting the letter out there? Put the letter out, Candace. Put it out there. Put everything out there. Didn't Dave Smith just go on X the other day and say that he gave, I'm not sure if he gave it to Candace, but he gave, I think he said he gave it to Candace. He gave all his correspondence and messages between him and Charlie Kirk. Put it out there. Let everybody know you're insinuating, you're implying, you're doing all these things. And even if you're not intentionally doing it, which, I mean, it's hard to argue that you're not, think about how people are going to receive the message. Think about people who believe what Nick said as far as that Israel has taken over the Trump administration. Think about how those people who are frustrated and furious about that are going to receive the information that you're now giving when it comes to Charlie Kirk's passing, the things that you're saying about Israel, saying they killed my friend, but not saying who they is. But then everything else that you're talking about is regarding Bibi Netanyahu and Israel. Think about how people are going to receive that. So there's a lot of observing that I'm doing. And I can understand from Candace's standpoint that when you believe that Israel is so powerful and has all this leverage, that it may be up for consideration when Bibi Netanyahu comes out and tries to change the narrative of Charlie Kirk and how he saw Israel and Bibi Netanyahu. I understand how that frustration can lead you to lash out and respond more emotionally based on your frustrations rather than considering how your message is going to be received. So I think that's what Nick is calling out. I think a lot of us do that. And I think a lot of people that have a voice, not to say that my voice is anywhere near as big as theirs, but have to just take that into consideration. I think all of us have to do it. Forget how big your voice is. I think this is what this is all about. Even what Nick is talking about, how people are responding to Charlie Kirk, how they're going to have this group, this database of over 80,000 names of people that were either celebrating the death of Charlie Kirk or responding into a way that was inappropriate, whatever that may have been, mocking it. And this database is going to be used to ostracize these people from getting jobs, from whatever else, right? Other opportunities that may come up. So I think that's what Nick is talking about. So knowing that Nick is aware of how people may respond to a lot of these situations, it goes back to what I was just saying, as far as we all have to be responsible and held accountable for how we're responding and putting out certain information, whether we have a huge platform like Nick and Candace, or whether we're just interacting with each other, because it sets the tone. A conversation that I may have with my friend that's in a private setting, if I'm amping up and I'm saying like, yo, forget Charlie Kirk, or if I'm saying certain things, that's going to get amplified. That's going to make people more comfortable to now, okay, you feel the same way? You know what? I'm going to put this out there. I'm going to put this out there. And it just becomes more and more radical because people get more and more comfortable with the validation that they're getting from everybody else. Everybody else that's typically in their bubble, in their circle. It just escalates what their initial feelings would have been. And then that radicalizes both sides and gets us to the point that we're at. So I think everybody just needs to be a bit more responsible and just understanding of the messages that they're putting out there, the influence, whether in a private setting or on a public platform. I think we just need to be more responsible. And what it comes back to me is what we started off with. You know, what's the goal of all this? What's the goal? What's the goal? Is the goal for us to live in harmony? Is the goal for us to fix our society? What is the goal? And once we align with that goal, right and wrong hold less relevance. Arguing between right and wrong holds less relevance, and we're just focusing on what's the best path to accomplish this goal. So I'll leave y'all with that. As always, appreciate y'all tapping in, showing love. Like the video if you like the video. Subscribe, turn your notifications on, and I appreciate y'all. I'll see you on the next video.
It's the black guy in the corner, but they'd rather see a on the corner. They say I'm stealing Nick's clips like I'm stealing Nick's chick, not knowing that I hit him first week for the lick. I said, Nick, I could post here while you post there. Let's run the ads up, then let's meet up over there.